Hi everybody, welcome back to Modern Homesteading. It is the end of August and I am so excited because all of our late summer crops are finally starting to ripen, like these beautiful tomatoes. In the July video, I promised that we were going to be going over some of our favorite tomato recipes once things came into season, and today is that day. I'm going to walk you through one of my very favorite tomato recipes, tomato pie. So hang on, here we go. Okay, so our first step, I don't know about you, but I'm messy. Apron. Especially since I chose to wear a white shirt. Yikes. Alright, so next step for tomato pie, before you even start working on your crust or anything, is you want to select and wash your tomatoes, of course. You can use any variety you like. I often use a mix. It just gives you a little bit rounder flavor profile if you use a mix of different tomatoes. The bigger slicing tomatoes work well. I've also made them before with a bunch of little snackers because that's what I had on hand. So whatever's easiest. Of course, you need a lot more of these and it's a little more time consuming to cut them up. But today I have a big boy, a couple of fresh pineapple tomatoes from the backyard, and a couple brandy wine and little snackers, and we're just going to do a good mix. What we're going to do is simply core them. And a smaller knife would probably be easier. This is my favorite slicing and chopping knife, so I grabbed it, but I didn't think about the core. So you're going to core them all, and we're just going to slice them up. I like to slice them across the tomato. So you get a nice slice and you get the round wheel. And you want to cut the slices about a 1/4 inch thick. Then, yep, we're gonna have to just have a sample right now because he just looks too good. Delicious. So we're gonna take all these tomato slices, and I've just taken a cookie sheet here and putting a dish towel down. You can put paper towel, whatever works for you. I will probably need 2 cookie sheets for this. We're gonna lay out our tomato slices, all of them.
Once you have all your tomatoes laid out in a single layer, you're going to liberally salt them. The salt is going to help to draw out the excess moisture. Once salted, place a towel over the top to absorb the extra liquid. This is going to help keep your pie crust from becoming soggy.
Just now, pushing down on it with my hands, you can see all the moisture that's starting to come through on that dish towel. So I'm going to set this on the stovetop back here, again with just another cookie sheet on top and a heavy pot to even out the pressure, and we're going to let that sit for at least half an hour and draw out as much moisture as we can. Okay, our tomatoes are resting back there. All that moisture is being drawn out. Now it's time to start your pie crust. So I have a friend who is awesome at making pies, and her crusts are always perfect. She told me that the secret was the Farm Journal Complete Pie Cookbook. This is the paperback edition from 1965. Another one of my favorites, more recent publication, is this book by Ken Heydrich, simply called Pie. It's like 700 pages. Goes through every kind of crust, every technique, every tool, all kinds of traditional and fun new contemporary fillings. This is my other go-to for pie. Now, if you don't want to attempt, don't have the time to attempt, have attempted and failed many times over and don't want to do it again at making pie crusts, then don't do it. There are awesome freezer pie crusts out there. You just simply go to your grocery store or order online to pick up at this point, and it's done. You set it out on the counter for 10 minutes and then you fill it and bake it. I love it. Half the time when I do this, don't tell Jean, I use freezer pie crust. But today, for the sake of this video and the very definition of homesteading, which is growing your own and making your own everything, we're gonna make it from scratch. So We're going to use the traditional flaky crust recipe from the Farm Journal Pie Cookbook. And I have to say, for savory pies, I do love using lard as the fat. It just adds that extra punch of flavor to the crust. It works really well because of the pork fat with a savory pie, which is what we're making today. Unfortunately, I didn't have lard, so my backup is vegetable shortening today. The recipe from the Farm Journal Cookbook, which I will add a copy of at the end of this video, calls for lard or shortening. You can also make it with butter. I have never successfully made a pie crust with butter, I don't think. I always have an easier time with the lard or the shortening. So that's the route we're going today.
I start this pie crust by sifting 2 cups of all-purpose flour to remove any lumps. Notice I have water chilling off to the side to use later. Temperature is important in making pie crust. Next, I'll add 1 teaspoon of salt and mix to evenly incorporate it into the flour. Then I add 3/4 of a cup of vegetable shortening. I like to use vegetable shortening because it is stored at room temperature and is less problematic than using a chilled fat like butter. Now you can use a fork or a pastry blender to break up the big pieces of the vegetable shortening. Then I will use my hands to evenly incorporate it. The goal here is not to play with it too much, but to get a texture of wet sand, small little chunks of shortening incorporated into the flour. Once it's well incorporated, you can begin to add the water. This recipe calls for 4 to 5 tablespoons. I start by adding 3 and then add 1 at a time after until the dough reaches the right consistency. Now I've dumped the dough mixture out onto the counter and continue to add water, 1 tablespoon at a time. To actually reach the consistency of the dough that I want to hold together, I've added 5.5 total tablespoons. Then I roll out the dough to the size of my pie pan, either by following the measurements on the rolling mat or using the pie dish as a guide. Remember to leave a couple inches of extra space around the size of the dish so that the dough will fit down into the pie dish. Once the dough reaches the desired size, place the pie dish upside down on top of the dough. 1 hand under the dough, 1 hand on the bottom of the pie dish, and flip so that the dough sits inside the dish.
Alright, so we got the pie out, and we did the big dramatic flip, and it was a little bit of a mess. So I just pile some extra crust bits up on the edge, take my fingers, and just push them together. So I'm pushing the knuckle of this finger in between the knuckle and the thumb on this hand. So it sits around. And if you have enough crust there, it makes that lovely zigzag like you see here. So we're going to finish going all the way around.
So now we're going to take this pie crust to the oven and bake it empty at 325 for about 10 to 12 minutes. While the pie crust is baking, chop 1/2 cup of onion and about 10 fresh basil leaves. Now for the cheese topping. You start with 3/4 cup mayonnaise, or you can use 1/4 cup mayo and 1/2 cup of Greek yogurt, followed by 1 cup of shredded cheddar cheese and 1 cup of shredded mozzarella or other soft white cheese. Here I used a herbed Havarti, followed by 2 tablespoons of grated Parmesan. Finally, salt and pepper to your liking. Mix it all together. Now that your pie crust has finished baking and you've mixed together the cheese topping, it's time to start assembling your pie. Start by laying out tomatoes in a layer after layer until you run out. Then sprinkle on your basil, then your onion, and then scoop on your cheese topping. This is tricky to spread around because the ingredients underneath are loose, so you kind of have to use your hands and flatten it out before you can spread it. Evenly spread it all the way to the crust. Now bake your pie for 30 minutes at 350 degrees.
30 minutes later, we have this lovely, cheesy, delicious golden crust pie. There it is. Steamy hot tomato pie.